In today's video, yearning for the father that didn't have your back. Mother's mistreating you. Dad knows about it but isn't stepping in. We'll talk about the toxic messages a child gets from that, because in this case, a mother is actually heaping some sort of mistreatment or even abuse on the child. And then the focus is all on the mom, right? My mother is a real bitch. She's mistreating me. Then everybody focuses on the mother, of course. Maybe she's even reported to the authorities. But who's getting off the hook here a little bit? If there's a father in the household, but then one could ask, why isn't there a father in the household? But if there's a father in the household, why is he not stepping in? He doesn't have your back. This is teaching a child so many messages about, number one, what it's like to be abandoned from a perfectly capable father in this case who is not advocating for you. But also a daughter is learning about what it means to be a man. Is she going to go out now and marry a man like this? After all, this is what she thinks a man is. And for a son, he's learning about masculinity, what it means to be in a marriage. I guess I need to find a woman who's going to run the show in the family. I mean, after all, that's what my own father did. So there's many angles to go with this, including the one I just mentioned. All these messages need to be filled in the child's mind because they're trying to make sense of this. Again, the example is that the mother is mistreating them and dad's doing nothing and dad's in the house. Or even if there's joint custody, they're probably telling their dad when they're over at dad's place, and yet dad still ships me back over to mom's and he knows I'm being abused there. He knows I don't want to live there. This is turmoil for a child because they're helpless. They're a young kid growing up, maybe age 5 or 8 or 10, and they don't know what to do. That's the father's role, especially if his wife is abusing or mistreating the child. Now, this could even apply to some form of emotional abuse, something that's very insidious and not really easy to be seen. And the father's always a bit distant, takes this back seat to everything, never has much of an opinion because he's likely afraid to stand up to his own wife. Could be he wants to keep peace in the marriage. He doesn't want to upset what's going on in the bedroom, right? Or worse yet, he just doesn't even give a damn about his own kids. Or maybe it's neither one of those. Maybe he's such a narcissist, so self-focused that it's only about his needs and what he wants in life and forget about everything else. So for a kid growing up, which is what we're focusing on in this video, they have to try to make sense of this. And of course, this is going to negatively impact, could be their whole life if they're not aware of the impact. I know for myself, because I was emotionally smothered by my own mother, also known as emotional incest, I've often found myself reflecting more on what my mother did to me and somehow, in a way, letting my father off the hook. And that's not fair because a marriage is supposed to be equal, a partnership, a team effort. And so like myself, we can catch ourselves asking, where was my dad? Why didn't he nudge his way in there and make his presence be known? And of course, as I mentioned earlier, in this case, it's going to influence a son's notion of masculinity. Then, in this case, a son growing up who's somehow been abandoned by his own father in different ways could either overcompensate by having toxic masculinity as he gets older. I'm going to be the man, the dude, to make up for what he was not provided by his own father. And as a young boy, he knew what was wrong. Nobody helped him with it. He didn't have the words for it. So now he's overcompensating as an adult male. Or on the flip side, continue being a wimp in his current relationship now as an adult. Kind of meek, not standing up for what's right perhaps, not helping co-parent his children in a healthy way. And these are just a few examples of how this can play out. This can go in many directions. Or worse yet, even encouraging the child who's being mistreated by the mother to just take it. It's okay, don't worry about it. Your mom's just being herself. You'll live. Even though the mom, let's say, is physically abusing her own daughter every week. And even worse yet, because you can dig deeper with this, telling the child who's been mistreated to go and apologize to your mother. How dare you complain about how your mother's raising you? Well, now that's one sick father right there. Now, of course, what can make matters worse is that if we filter in that if there's several children in the household, the mother has her favorites and the dad has his favorites. And maybe only one of the children is being mistreated. Could be all of them, but let's just say one. And that child, of course, is wondering, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I being singled out here? Which we can only begin to say as said child gets older. Talk about a deep mistrust of others. Talk about intimacy issues that are going to come up. Talk about poor communication skills. It wasn't safe for that child to put their feelings into words, so everything had to be repressed. But sometimes this happens when toxic parents want to divide the children as well. And if the father is allowing it, let's say the mother's more of the leader, then the focus may be all on the bad mother. But we can't let the father off the hook this easily, because there's likely going to be a lot of repressed anger and deep emotions about why my father didn't step in. He was content to just hide behind his newspaper and act like everything was okay. So one can ask themselves, am I overly aware about how my mother mistreated me because I don't want to implicate my dad? That's too painful to believe my dad was in collusion with this. Sometimes mistreated children need to have a fantasy in their mind. Well, at least I had one parent that was okay. So they'll have the illusion that, using the father in this case, that no, he was okay. He just didn't really get it. He didn't know what was going on. Even though on some level they know he's very responsible, but they can't go there because it may bring up too many deep feelings that they just don't want to feel. They just absolutely don't want to believe that neither parent had their back. But of course, it's healthy to get in touch with that, because these are feelings that are there anyhow, right? What are we going to do? Push them away? The problem with pushing them away is that feelings don't just dissolve. They're there anyhow. They're going to find a way up one way or another. And if they don't, it's likely because someone is numbing the feelings through drinking or drugs or gambling, etc. And of course, they may pop up in terms of panic attacks, anxiety disorders, bottled up rage that's always there on the surface, and of course, many, many more symptoms. And it's also important to feel these deeper feelings because, well, grieving needs to happen, number one, sadness about the impact of the childhood, but also a sense of betrayal is likely there, being betrayed by the father who didn't step in and have their back. Well, of course, and also betrayal from the mother, but now we're talking in this video more so about the parent in the so-called background. And if we're not in touch with the betrayal, then we may feel betrayed by life. We're going to apply that to all aspects of our life, and that's not true. Many aspects of life, many people out there in the world are very fair, but we may project onto everybody and everything, I can't trust anything. And the betrayal wound that they're now projecting onto everything that's now impacting their life, making them miserable, has to be dealt with, and can only be dealt with if we get in touch with these deeper feelings, these deeper dynamics that actually went on in the household. And the child that's been mistreated may somehow believe it's their fault. So now the child will internalize feelings like there's something wrong with me. I can see why I was hated. I can see why I was mistreated. I'm no good, which of course is utterly false. But when we're being abused, taken advantage of by our own parents, and we're a kid growing up, we don't know how to place this on them. We don't have the words for that. So we think it's our fault on some level. There's nowhere else to go with it, right? We have to blame ourselves. And this, of course, can be amplified by parents saying things to a child when they're growing up, like, everything was okay till you were born. Wow, raising you has been a handful. Well, how's a child going to react to these type of comments when they're young and growing up? And by the way, in realizing this, now that the video is winding down, it's not to create victim mentality in any child that's been abused growing up. It's not being done to help somebody wallow in what they went through. The difference between that and simply assigning responsibility to a toxic parent. That's a fact. We were mistreated. Who mistreated you? How were you mistreated? These facts need to be called out so we can begin the healing journey, which has nothing to do with victim mentality. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about fathers who don't step up and advocate for their own children. Please leave them in the comment section below. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.